All right, so in this video, we are going to learn about a concept called secondary dominance, which is what allows us to borrow chords from other keys, right? So if we're in the key of C, for example, right? The key of C uses no sharps and no flats, right? It's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? And so within this scale, right, we have C is the first note, D is the second, E is the third, F is the fourth, G is the fifth, A is the sixth, B is the seventh. All right, so first off, a dominant chord is the 5 chord of any scale, right? So we said G was the 5th note. So if we build a chord based off our scale starting on the 5th note, we would get that. And then usually a dominant chord has a 4th note, which we call the 7th of the chord. So this would be called a G dominant chord, and it is the 5th chord in the key of C. Hopefully you're still with me here. We're using a lot of numbers. So in the key of C, and in any scale actually, there's only one dominant chord, which is the 5 chord, based off the 5th note of the scale. But we can use the 5 chord from other keys within our scale. So what I mean by that is, let's pick like the 6th note of our scale, right? Which in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the note A. So what we need to do now is, we want to pretend just for a moment that we're in the key of A, just so we can find the other chord, because within the key of A, we're going to use the 5 chord of that key, right? So the key of A has those notes, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, E is the 5th note in the key of A. So the 5 chord in the key of A is the E dominant chord, E, G sharp, B, and D. So we're going to borrow that chord in our key of C. And so the way we borrow it is, after we use this chord, we just go to the chord that we borrowed it from, right? So we borrowed it from the key of A. So then after we do this E dominant chord, we're going to go to the A chord. This is just an A chord second inversion, right? So now, here's what we're going to do. So now I'm going to play a progression where we're back in the key of C now, right? We only temporarily move to the key of A just to find that E chord. So now we can make a chord progression that uses that chord as long as we go to the A chord after, which is where we borrowed it from, right? So here's what it would sound like. And then maybe you go to your regular 4 chord after that, right? Because in the key of C, F is the 4th note, so that would be the 4 chord. So that's how it would sound. And that is how we use borrowed chords from the concept called secondary dominance, right? Because we're borrowing a dominant chord from another key within our scale, right? So that E dominant chord, we borrowed that from our note A, which was the 6th note of the scale. So what we would call that is, we would say, this is called the 5 of 6, all right? A lot of numbers here, but it's called the 5 of 6 because this is the 5 chord of the 6th note of our scale. So once again, you can borrow 5 chords from any other note within your scale. If you want another video of this to see another example, please comment below and let me know. If you have any questions, as always, let me know.